Hello and welcome to The Last Nighters. We are The Last Nighters talking about The Big Lebowski. This is episode 11, can be found at lastnighters.com/11. My name is Daniel and my co-host is Robert. And we're about to get into the Google description of The Big Lebowski, but first a word from our sponsor, Robert Johnson. How you doing, sir?
Hey, yeah, the check is in the mail, buddy. I'm sure you'll be getting my monies. I'm doing great, buddy. I'm all jazzed up for this one. Watched the movie last night, as makes sense, as per the show requirements, and I'm interested to see what you had to think about that one. But let's do this. The Scoobles.
We'll do the Scoobles, the Scooby snacks here. The Scooby description snacks. All right, the Big Lebowski came out in 1998 indie film, stoner film, 1 hour, 59 minutes, 8.2 on IMDb, 81% Rotten Tomatoes, and 87% of Google users like and approve of this movie. And I'm surprised that's not a higher rating. I mean, it's high. Not quite as high as Jeff Lebowski, but, you know, for a cult classic that has so many quotable things going and so many indelible scenes, I'm surprised it's not higher than that. But here is the description. Jeff Bridges plays Jeff Lebowski, who insists on being called the Dude, a laid-back, easygoing burnout who happens to have the same name as a millionaire whose wife owes a lot of dangerous people a whole bunch of money, resulting in the Dude having his rug soiled, sending him spiraling into the Los Angeles underworld. Came out March 6, 1998. It's the Coen brothers. Box office of $46.2 million. So not super awesome at the box office, though probably made their money back. But I think this is one of those movies that lived on in the DVD and since as a very rewatchable and enjoyable film. Just to do the spoilers all the time, I'm going to give a pretty good review on this thing. But what do you take away from that Google description, Robert?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how happy it makes me to know that there is some Google staffer somewhere that has a description, a category of films labeled stoner movie. That just makes me happy that it's hard enough to categorize movies, and to have an entire genre called stoner films is something, because there are some musical interludes in this movie that are a bit psychedelic. And it's very definitely like a pro, or at least not a negative, anti-drug message that you get out of watching this movie. But I don't know how much of a stoner film it is, other than just, dude's overall chill attitude about pretty much everything in the movie. But yeah, it's good.
Well, you mind if I do a J? I mean, there's a fair amount of him being mind-altered. He even makes reference to it in his discussion with Maude, saying that he needed to be on a very strict drug regimen to the ins and the outs of the case. A lot of moving parts here. You're not privy to the new shit?
Hey, man, new shit has come to light. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of drug use in the movie, but I don't know. What do you call a stoner film? What else qualifies? Maybe Dazed and Confused? But why? Yeah. What makes that a stoner film?
I think just the fact that they're stoned pretty often.
So as long as your characters are stoned, it's a stoner film?
Well, this is an interesting angle, because I think it takes a little bit more than just having your characters stoned in the movie. I think it has to do with having the dialogue and the little vignette-type scenes that are just rewatchable and enjoyable in different ways when you're inebriated versus not. That sort of qualifies it. It transcends into...
Full disclosure, Daniel, you watched this movie completely sober recently, so I just want to point that out. So your review is tainted heavily by your unwillingness to watch this movie properly.
Well, I'm the yin to your yang. We need to get the two different perspectives on this thing. It's like the two-party system, only we're really of the same bird, just like politics, really.
Yeah, because there's nothing that says diversity like a two-party system. You get the whole story from the two, which are essentially the one. right?
Right. Every time, all the time.
You get all the best options.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with? There's not a whole lot of emotional content here, except for when Donnie kicks the bucket.
Yeah, but yeah. Well, okay. When at the very, very end, the ashes spreading scene gets a little bit emotional, but then it's immediately undercut by the comedy of the dude getting splashed in the face with his ashes. So I don't know.
Yeah, so that was our tears jerked at the very end. But let's sort of start at the beginning, because I think that this is a movie that I've watched many times, and I don't think if I really ever fully understood it nor really cared to follow the story itself until recently, until watching it for the show, because it's a movie that the scenes, the bits and parts are almost greater than the movie itself. Like, taking them piece by piece are almost strong enough on their own, because every scene has something going on that is just hilarious. And I think that when they pieced it together to try to tell this whole story arc, there are some holes, and maybe you and I can discuss, and maybe we'll figure out how they get from plot point A to C or D. But I just, in my own experience, the overall story didn't really matter so much to me until recently, and I still found the movie enjoyable.
Yeah, I think if you're watching the movie sober to the point where you care about the story making a whole lot of sense, I think you're doing it wrong. I think, like you said, you need to be, you can do it inebriated and just enjoy each individual scene as the Coen brothers masterfully crafted the comedy and the bizarre. I mean, if you don't get a pleasure out of seeing Turturro on screen in his very first scene, you're doing it wrong. This movie is filled with some of the best character actors working in Hollywood, with Turturro, Goodman, Bridges, and Buscemi. Probably Bridges is probably the most overall accomplished good actor, followed very closely behind by John Goodman, who's also a master. But if you want, just genius character after genius character, and then there's who plays Maude?
Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore as Maude is also amazing. And then there's also an appearance by Job, isn't it? No, not Job. From Arrested Development as Maude's friend. I forget his name in that show, but all kinds of fun little stuff that you see in this movie, masterfully made by the Coens.
Yeah, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it, Tara Reid, and just line after line of just hilarious, fun stuff. And one of our previous guests on the show, his favorite moment is the laugh that Philip Seymour Hoffman says after Tara Reid offers to suck the dude's cock for $1,000. And as he's getting dragged away, he says, I just have to fight a cash machine.
Yeah.
Oh, comedy gold, comedy gold. So
yeah, there's a lot of masterful scenes. Goodman talking in the diner is really strong. Anything with Turturro in it, playing Jesus. Yeah, just and then Bridges throughout the whole film is fantastic. So, and then of course you got Sam, right? The what's his name?
Sam Elliott, yeah.
Sam Elliott at the bookending the whole story. He's a master. Yeah, it's just filled with. I'm surprised this movie didn't do very well at the box office, but yeah, it's definitely developed a cult following since.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning, because there's a miscommunication or misunderstanding, because he has the same name as this supposed millionaire. And so these two toughs, one is, they call him the Chinaman. They break into the dude's apartment and rough him up and soil on the rug. And then they discover that, hey, maybe it's the wrong guy. and then they blame him for being the wrong guy and get pissed at him. They're like, "Thanks a lot, asshole."
Yep. Yeah, I like how this movie is all based off of one misunderstanding. I enjoy that. It sets the whole movie in motion. The idea that the dude's apartment could be mistaken for a wealthy man's apartment is kind of hilarious. I mean, even going into the neighborhood, you would go, I think we probably got the wrong neighborhood. And then you break into the guy's apartment, and you're like, yeah, there's no way it could be this guy. And they still go and assault the guy and intimidate him all the best they can until they finally realize. I mean, these crooks are so stupid, but it just leads for comedy.
Yeah, and I think his name was Wu. And then when they were talking about it at the bowling alley, of course, Goodman's character's like, "Dude, Chinaman is not the proper nomenclature." And then moments later, he calls him, "The Chinaman is not the issue here." So that stood out to me as like one of those progressive holier than thou things, like, oh, you don't say those words, but then the moment later they end up using the same term, that the hypocritical thing. That was pretty funny.
Sure. Oh yeah. Well, do you want to talk about the ethical, moral implications in the story? I mean, right off the bat, you've got Lebowski, who is attacked by these two thugs. And then he goes to seek recompense by the real Lebowski. And I think the real Lebowski's, or the Big Lebowski's response is completely apt. Like, I'm sorry, this happened to you, but this has nothing to do with me. I don't owe you anything.
Right, yeah. Do I have to recompense anyone whose rug has been miterated upon in this fair city?
Yeah, I mean, he's completely right about that. I mean, where does the dude get off asking the Big Lebowski for anything in this situation? Go to the people who violated you. I mean, even if, find them, seek them out, do what you got to do. But where does he get off asking the Big Lebowski for anything? It just boggled my mind at the time.
Yeah, I think the Big Lebowski is correct in his questioning, like, well, Brent told me, and, now you're telling me, and what does it have to do with me? But there is a certain connection that I can make, and that is, well, they were trying to get this other, the Big Lebowski. They were trying to attack him because his wife is the one causing all these, debts and everything. And so it's like the ball was in motion, and then the criminals pointed their anger and offense in the wrong direction. So you're right, Lebowski, Jeff, they're both Jeff. The dude should be upset with the guys who pissed on his rug. But he's also this kind of revolutionary type, like this burned out 60s type protester from Seattle 7 and writing manifestos and whatnot, or what was it called, the Hampton Concords or something like that.
Right, the initial draft, not the second,
not the
watered down version.
So I can see him having this like sense of entitlement and righteousness and justice being more nebulous rather than purely property rights driven, ethic, I guess.
Right. Sure. It's within his character, but if we're analyzing it from our perspective, it's ridiculous. I mean, if anything, he could maybe offer up some information for the Big Lebowski, saying, "Hey, there's some guys looking out for you." Maybe he could sell the information in exchange for a rug cleaning or something. I don't know, but yeah, the way the script plays out, I thought the dude starts off fairly ridiculous. But he's a stoner the whole movie, so you can't really hold him to the same standards of most normal people, I suppose.
Yeah, and I do love that initial meeting between him and the Big Lebowski, because he's like, do you go out in public dressed like this? Do you go seeking gainful employment dressed like this? And on a weekday, sir? And the dude's like, what day is it? It's a weekday?
Right.
Just no concept of time, and it sort of reminds me of there was a period of time in your life, I think, where you were like, what day is it? I don't even know. And our next show, I think, is going to be Billy Madison. There's a beautiful line in that where he goes, "What day is it?" And Norm Macdonald says, "October." It's almost the same thing here. Oh, good stuff.
Yes.
But then the Big Lebowski is like, your revolution is over, sir. The bum's lost. Get a job, sir.
And he's not wrong about any of that.
No, he's not wrong. I mean, and it's very similar with the John Goodman character. You know, am I wrong? Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole. And I think that the Big Lebowski isn't wrong here, but he is kind of an asshole.
He is, but he's absolutely in the right. I felt complete solidarity with the Big Lebowski. I mean, when some hippie bum guy comes in accusing you of, or, you know, needing to recompense him for his damaged property, I'd be like, hit the brakes, buddy. I don't owe you anything. What are you talking about? I might, you know, treat him to a drink or a beverage and maybe a scone or something, but and thank him for the information that there are people out there looking for me. But yeah, anyway, let's move on though, because there is at least one instance of actual bizarre behavior that definitely crosses the nap.
Well, before we get to that, I do want to.
Oh, okay.
Before we get to that, I do want to ask. The dude lies to Philip Seymour Hoffman and says, "Oh yeah, the old man said take any rug in the house." So the dude is stealing the rug.
Yes, he absolutely is. You're right, and I'm glad you brought that up because I did have that written down. Yeah, he commits fraud.
Yeah, and then Maude assaults him and steals it back.
Yeah.
But by that time, the Big Lebowski has said, no, you can keep it. But Maude's response is, I gave that as a gift to my mother. The mother has since died. And my wife brought this up when we were watching the movie. She's like, well, if Maude gave it to her mother and her mother was married to the Big Lebowski and then the wife dies, then shouldn't it be the Big Lebowski's rug? But then later it's revealed that Maude is actually the one in control of all the funds and Dad is on an allowance. And he's only trying to appear to be rich. And so if Maude was the executor to the estate, then the rug was still hers. And I wondered if you caught wind of any of this, if you can clarify that at all. Before we get to the Walter over the line, Smokey.
No, that's what you just said is all correct, although I did not recall all that in as perfect detail as you did, being as altered state as I was in.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's get to the line, Smokey.
The what?
Over the line, Smokey. I think that's where.
Oh, yes. So Walter is upset. They're in a. It's not a league match, but it determines like league placement or something like that, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, they're bowling, and the team they're bowling against, one of the guys goes over the line maybe. We don't know. We didn't see it, but Walter supposedly does. And they get into a shouting match, whereupon Walter pulls out a pistol and sticks it in the guy's face, essentially threatening to murder him if he doesn't strike the 8 points off his score. Which just gives you an idea of how unstable this Walter character is. I mean, he does multiple unhinged things throughout the movie, from throwing his own underwear over the bridge to destroying the Corvette.
And then he
he does all kinds of crazy things, but just that initial NAP cross was just so over the top. I don't know, what do you even attribute that to? That's like his nom history, his just over the top testosterone. I don't really know, but it's definitely an aggression.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think that he's a damaged guy. You know, he's got the nom stuff, probably some PTSD style. He's constantly referencing it, and then he's also gone through a divorce. Yet he still goes to the same church that his wife went to. He's still taking care of the dog. she's moved on to another relationship. So there's clearly some issues going on with this guy, and he does have a very short fuse and a very explosive temper. And he's quick to anger and quick to violence. And he has some pretty ridiculous schemes where he thinks that that's the quickest way and best way to solve any of the problems that the dude faces.
Right. And then when they actually come to, I think, who was it? Was the pacifist? When the dude's talking about there being a pacifist, and Walter just thinks that's like a mental disorder. It's kind of funny. Because he obviously, he's quick to solve his problems with violence, and he has no problem doing so. He still has that kind of war mentality. The direct, violent approach is solving problems.
Yeah, so then right after that, they get the call to do the ringer, right? The ringer for the ringer. And he throws his whites over the edge and rolls himself out at 15 miles an hour, and the Uzi starts shooting everywhere, and the car gets crashed. And so they fail right at this drop, and then recovering Bunny Lebowski. And after it's all fucked up, he goes, "All right, dude, let's go bowling." Because that's like every time something bad happens, they just go bowling. And so they've got the money in the car in this case. And when they're done bowling, the car's gone because he parked in a handicap spot.
Yeah, they just fail at basic
stolen.
human shit.
Yeah, it's just bizarre, right? So the car's either towed or stolen. But why would you leave a case of $1 million inside, if they believed that there was $1 million, in this broken car in the bowling alley? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Their level of folly is like cartoonish. Either they're so altered from normal humanity, or they're just so stupid. I mean, they're in L.A. They have a car that maybe their defense is that, hey, nobody would think to ever look inside this car or steal this car for any kind of valuables because it is just some old POS.
Yeah, so they'll just sleep in it or use it for defecation.
Right. So, I mean, it's definitely, I don't know. I can't really explain that. I think any normal average person would keep the case on them at all times. But, so maybe did that bother you, like as a plot point?
It bothered me just a little bit. I mean, but it's also par for the course with the dude and how he's not altogether with it. None of the characters are, so it doesn't make sense for them to make a whole lot of good decisions.
Right.
And his apartment got tossed several times anyway, so, where would it have been better to have kept the money?
Yeah, and the dude is so stupid that he puts this 2x4 to block his door, but then the door opens out, so it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So what did you take on the cops when he was doing his report for the stolen vehicle? And then he mentions that the rug also got stolen, and the cop's like, "Oh, 2 cases. Is this a serial thing or something?" And then Maude leaves a message, and he goes, "Oh, that's 1 case solved."
Yeah. I mean, these are funny scenes. I don't know how much you want to analyze them for, plot content versus comedy. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold out hope for the credence, though.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean,
we could talk about how inept the cops are, I guess.
Yeah, how useless they are. I mean, they're just like crime historians, right?
Yeah, and then there's a scene at the junkyard when he gets his car back, and the cops even joking about how, they've got detectives working on this stolen car case.
Yeah, in shifts.
I mean, it reminds me of being kids when we had our bikes stolen. Well, we kind of gave them away, but it was a fraud case where they promised a certain thing and they didn't deliver. I mean, it really was a trade. And I remember my father telling me, "Oh yeah, there's all kinds of detectives working the case." And I kind of knew he was bullshitting me, but I kind of wanted it to be true, so I didn't press him further on it. But of course, did we ever get those bikes back, or when we did, they were all destroyed? Is that right? Is that right?
Oh man, you're going real deep back for me. I don't remember it at all.
You don't remember that at all? You remember the day, right? Like when we originally gave them the bikes, like these two girls, we were riding our bikes downtown, and these two girls were walking by, and I forget what they said, but they, engaged us in conversation, and they proceeded to swindle us out of our bikes because they promised, I forget what they promised, but a certain amount of money. Remember this? This is like a big event. I loved that bike.
Yeah, not at all, man. Not at all.
Wow. Were you like stoned our entire childhood?
I have a terrible memory, but yeah, this is way out of the bushes, man. I don't remember this at all. Though it doesn't surprise me to be swindled by a woman.
Well, sure. I mean, this kind of just set up my entire life. Just set the tone. But yeah, they took our bikes, and then we had to walk home. And then I don't think we ever got the bikes back. If they did, they were all destroyed. I remember like they found them, but they had been run over by a car multiple times. And he just blocked it out. This isn't triggering any thoughts, huh? Okay. No ringing bells?
No, but
good time.
Maybe I did block that out because it was so traumatic. But speaking of traumatic, let's talk about log jamming.
Oh, yeah, good time.
Carl
good
Hungus.
Good movie.
I'm here to fix the cable.
Uh-huh.
So help me understand this, because eventually the dude figures out that Bunny is in the porn films, and one of the guys who's in the film is one of the nihilists, right?
Yeah, he's one of the kidnappers.
Yeah, he's one of the quote-unquote kidnappers. And he knows her, she knows him, and Maud knows this. And so Maud suspects that the Big Lebowski is laundering or embezzling the money to make this payoff, but Bunny is with friends or, with these people that she knows from the porno. And she's just trying to, see, this is where I'm confused. Like, was the Big Lebowski just using her being gone as an opportunity, like a crime of opportunity, or did he put the nihilists up to it and orchestrate this whole thing? And furthermore, even if that were the plan, how would him giving $1 million falsely, but taking $1 million out of the account and pinning it on the dude, how does that prevent the finger from coming back to him? Because he doesn't go to the police with this. And I would think that by not going to the police with this and not having like an official record of it, that the charity or whatever it's called, the Lebowski Foundation, would still be looking at him as like the culprit for this.
All I got out of all that word salad of what you said was basically blah, blah, blah. I watched the movie sober, blah, blah, blah. Feel pity on me. That I was trying to make sense of it all. Because, yeah, man, I think if you analyze it like that and try and figure out all the motivations and who knew what, when, and where, it probably doesn't make too much sense. The best answer I could give you was I think it was a crime of opportunity. The log jamming guy knew that Bunny was out of town and decided to try and maybe get some money. And then Big Lebowski was like, ooh, this is a chance to get money for me too, without thinking too far ahead. Like they would never actually cast a whole lot of suspicions on me, I guess, because I'm I draw a lot of water in this town, right? I mean, there's the sheriff that was another guy. That was the other guy. That was the log jamming producer guy. But I imagine it was a similar situation for Big Lebowski. Mr. High Reputation wouldn't draw a whole lot of attention to him, especially not from some stoner loser like dude pointing any fingers. But hey, man,
right? But
I just think you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but giving the money to the dude and then having that be your cover story would make it even more suspicious, right?
I would hope so. You had this guy be the bag man? Really? Mr. Can't get his shit together at all?
Hey, I got a beverage here,
guy?
man. I got a beverage here. They did not receive the money. Nothing is fucked. Oh, man. So speaking of out-of-scale responses to things with aggression, like Walter with the over-the-line Smokey, what do you make of when the Big Lebowski pulls the dude into the limo and the dude's like, you're not privy to the new shit, and the Big Lebowski says, if there's one hair harmed on her little head or another toe, then I will reciprocally, give you the 10 times the amount of punishment. Did you feel like that was almost a, dare I say, Capistani style of justice?
Well, except for the fact that he's committing fraud the entire time. Sorry, he's pretending to be upset that the dude didn't make the drop, of which there was no drop, and he knew it.
Right, and he knew that there was no money in there. Now, whether he believed that she was actually at risk or hoped that she would be murdered, I don't even know. I'm kind of confused on that part. But there was the toe, and that was the girlfriend of one of the nihilists. Right,
that was like Logjammin's girlfriend.
Right. And that was to like authenticate that there's really a person at risk here. Bunny is really in harm's way. And so the Big Lebowski really did think that she was going to die because he knew that he didn't pay the money.
Yeah, he was hoping that she would die. He would be done and rid of her. And so he put on a big show of having her be his light of his life, and then gave, dude a bunch of phone books to deliver in lieu of cash, and then blame the dude for it.
Right, and they delivered the whites instead of the phone books, but really, about the same value there.
I'd probably take the whites, although Walter's whites, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot going on in this movie, and I think if you do try to pick it apart, it loses a bit of its luster, so it really is meant to be, like you said, ingested a bit, inebriated, and just for the scenes and the jokes contained therein.
Yeah, and watching it last night, I remember this movie just kind of ending. There isn't like a big climactic scene, although there is a big fight scene at the end, but it just kind of all of a sudden happens, and it's not like that. This is a movie where there's a kind of like a three-act structure where, everything is at risk, and then the hero comes through and does something heroic and that sort of thing. There's not really so much of that. I remember the movie just kind of going along and then being over all of a sudden.
Yeah, but it does get figured out. And it turns out that the dude was pretty much right the whole time. Like, she kidnapped herself, or didn't even kidnap herself at all. She just, up and left for the weekend.
Right.
And then she showed back up, crashed the car into the fountain, and was running around. And the nihilists still want their money.
Right, and at the end they'll settle for just whatever's in your pockets. They want to get something out of it.
Yeah, and I meant to ask you about that one, because Walter's like, no, what's mine is mine. You come and get it, nihilists.
Yeah, I thought that was great. That's where Walter shines. Because in the diner, it's really sad because he's like, there's a property rights argument there too, where Walter's causing a disturbance, and the lady that works there is like, hey, you keep causing a disturbance, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And Walter's like, this isn't what my buddies died face down in the mud for. They died protecting your freedoms. And I was just like, even altered. I'm like, you're justifying the Vietnam War as a way to have protected the freedoms of American citizens? Are you joking? Who still believes that line of BS? But I guess Walter does. But then, yeah, he shines at the very end where he takes a stand and he's like, "No, I'm not giving you anything." And I was cheering on Walter at the end there for sure.
Yeah, and he was very, very violent in his response to them. But I mean, to be fair, they had a sword, and they, could have easily killed both of them or all three of them. I mean, Donnie died just as a result of all the excitement, which was sad.
Right. Right.
And they're mean to Donnie the whole time, and then in the end, when he's being spread, Walter says mostly nice things about him, and then of course brings up Vietnam again, and then dusts the dude fairly quite a bit. So that was pretty nasty. But yeah, then the movie just kind of ends when they realize that the nihilists, there's no hostage. That's not how this works. Those aren't the rules. And yeah, then it's kind of the end.
Yeah, just kind of over. I mean, it's sort of resolved, but yeah, like you said, I mean, you have to. I guess the nihilists got punished in the fight. I guess the Lebowski doesn't face any repercussions. The Big Lebowski doesn't face any repercussions other than having his irresponsible wife home to cause more trouble for him. The dude is just the same. There's no real character arc with him. He learns some things throughout the movie, but nothing about his character. He doesn't face any character growth or anything like that. The characters are it's more of a slice of life type of movie. But it's really, it doesn't really work in terms of character arcs, but it still works as a movie, I guess. It still works as a collage of scenes and just character actors just chewing scenery. So it's good in that sense.
Now, does this line up with most of the other Coen brothers' work for you, or does it stand out as better than the rest, or different in any respect, or is it pretty much in line for you?
It's less of a complete movie than their other work. I think that they've done some really good stuff, like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and Fargo, and other things like that. They've had a really varied career. I mean, for them to have done, there's always that little bit of, just kind of unique, special, Coen Brothers touch and feel to it. That's just a little bit off. They have their own, unique perspective that comes across in their work that's just really fun. But for me, this movie is, probably third or fourth on the list of Coen Brother movies, just because they've done such great work. I mean, No Country for Old Men, it's a fantastic movie. And varied, different. I mean, similar to Fargo, I guess, but they do non-standard things. They're not afraid to do just crazy shit that you wouldn't think would work. Like in No Country for Old Men, where they kill the main protagonist off screen. It's just what the hell? They'll do amazing stuff, and just surprise you, which is one of the hallmarks of their work is just surprise, which is, for a jaded moviegoer like myself, is really nice.
All right, well said. Well, I know we've got a little bit of time left, so I'm pretty much through my notes, but do you want to maybe go through some of the characters that you really liked? I know you were talking about Quintana, Jesus Quintana, and maybe just go through some of your favorite moments with each of the characters?
Well, sure. My favorite Walter scene is when they're in the diner, and they're talking about the toe, and the dude is concerned about the toe, and the Walter's like, "You want a toe? I can get you a toe. I can get you a toe by 3 o'clock in the afternoon." I mean, who says that kind of thing? Who says, and then it's specific to name a time at which he could produce a toe for you if you really needed a toe. It's just comedic genius. Buscemi's character didn't really get a whole lot to do other than just get yelled at. He was more just like a foil for Goodman's character. Every time Turturro's on screen, it's magic. He needed to be more in the movie. The very beginning where he's licking the bowling ball, and then he's talking about fucking them. Oh, they'll have to fuck them on the weekend, or he couldn't fuck them on the Shabbos. the whole thing about Shabbos. It's all good. And then Maud, where she's initially asking him about if he likes sex or not, is really good. And then where the dude's like, man, I'm talking about a rug, man.
Oh, you mean coitus?
So good. Yeah, I mean, those are some of my favorite moments from this movie, but there are just so many to be had. What are some of your favorites, sir?
Well, I like the "Is this your homework, Larry?" And the kid really doesn't know what to say, so Goodman gets so upset so quickly. He's like, "This kid's stonewalling me," and he goes out and smashes up the car. And Donnie keeps talking about the In-N-Out burger. Goodman's getting so upset with him. Like every time Donnie and Goodman are interacting, it's Goodman yelling at him like, "You're like a child just walked into a movie. You're out of your element, Donnie. Shut the fuck up." It's just,
right.
It's so good, and it's like this whole movie is just stuff that you can just replay in your head and quote, and it just gives you a chuckle even thinking about it. So it's really good stuff, and I think that really helps with the cult classic aspect of it. There's actually a bar in Reykjavik, Iceland. My wife and I went there about 5 years ago to check out the country. And there's a bar themed after Lebowski. And they, serve up Caucasians, and they've got bowling alley regalia and all that stuff all around it. And I think it's called Lebowski's. And they've got the little
Very
time,
nice.
like you can see yourself in the reflection, the time Lebowski Achiever of the Year kind of thing. It's good stuff.
And this movie also features one of my favorite musical interludes of all time, for Just Dropped In by Kenny Rogers. Classic song, and it's done to perfection in this film.
Oh, is that just checking or seeing what condition my condition was in?
I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in, yes. Fantastic musical interlude when the dude has been drugged. Of course, he's drugged the whole movie, but specifically drugged by Logjam and producer guy.
Yeah, Jackie Treehorn. Yeah. Now, was that whole drugging the dude, was that just so they could ransack his apartment looking for the money?
Dude, don't ask me. I don't know. Because then he just wakes up, outside, just walking down the street in Malibu or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and then he gets yelled at by the cop and says, "Excuse, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening." And the cop throws the mug at his head. He calls him a fucking fascist. Oh,
yep.
man. Just,
I feel like this episode is just us like reminiscing about the movie that we just watched.
That's pretty much all it is. This is the low point of our show, but this is such like I said, a sum of parts movie where it's not really worth even talking about the whole thing. It's just fun to laugh about the moments, I think.
Yeah, I mean, did you like that moment when is pretty much what this movie is really good fodder for.
Right,
and it holds up. This is the 20-year anniversary of it, and we're still laughing about it today. So, kudos to the Coens.
Yeah, I would agree. And
people involved.
This came out, at a time when in our lives we were just out of high school and still in the mode of watching a movie and then quoting it to death. And I feel like that this is one that I still quoted until present day. I mean, even though I haven't seen it in a few years, I've still been quoting it, especially that's like your opinion, man. I use that GIF all the time on Facebook in debates. I'm trying to debate less on Facebook with people because it's not really all that effective, but it is a great GIF to use.
It's so useful in so many different situations. Pretty much anytime anybody says anything, you can throw that out there. It's timeless. It's evergreen. And everybody knows what it is from and appreciates it, so you can also use it to lighten the tone. It's good. Because things can get pretty serious pretty quick on Facebook. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh, yeah. I also use that escalated quickly. fairly often. All right. Well, I think we're running out of actual content here. So let's get into our final summary and review before we wind the show down. We've been talking for just under an hour here, and I think it might have been fun for some of our audience, but maybe not. So maybe we'll end the suffering and get into the final summary and review, Robert.
Well, if you haven't seen The Big Lebowski by now, what are you waiting for? 20-year anniversary here. I imagine this is just one big nostalgia episode because that's basically what it was for us. It's a great genius comedy by some very, very talented people. All the actors, the writers, the direction, it's all high quality. So for me, this movie is like an 8.5, and that's really high for a comedy. Usually comedies don't hold up over time. I would say like the original Airplane movie, the Naked Gun type series movies, those hold up for me personally because that's that kind of slapstick kind of like stuff really works for me. But a lot of other comedies, not so much, but this one really does hold up. Yeah, so really strong, 8.5, man. Watch it again, and then again, and then again. Preferably a little bit altered, but I'll leave that up to your own discretion.
Or try it, many different ways, and it'll really help the room come together.
That's right. It will, even though that's just your opinion.
All right, you fucking fascist. I agree. This is a very good movie, but like I said, the parts are greater than the sum. It's like the little moments I think stand out, and so you could watch it's one of those movies that could just be on, and you could pay attention at any point for 5, 10, 20 minutes and still get an enjoyable experience. You don't need to see the whole movie. Of course, I recommend seeing the whole movie. I'm going to put it up there like at a 9. Just because it has a whole lot of nostalgia for me, and like you were saying, all the character actors and all the great moments and the great quotable lines and the comedy within the comedy is really strong, and so I highly recommend this one. Agreed.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best scripted, like plot-wise movie. You're not going to get super excited about, it's not a thriller. It's a different animal. But of course, I mean, you know that. Why am I even talking? It's The Big Lebowski, man. Thanks for listening to the episode.
All right, thank you, dudes, and we'll say good night from last night. Here we go.